Anything more unsettling than what you just saw, what happened to Elisa Lam. That was the last footage of her before she was found dead in a water tank on top of the Cecil Hotel. Because I just keep imagining her last day alive, buying books at a local bookstore, enjoying her solo road trip, and then going back into this creepy hotel, not knowing that she would soon become a horrible part of its history forever. I also can't imagine being one of the guests at the hotel that had black water that had an unusual taste, without knowing that Elisa had been dead inside one of the water tanks for weeks, directly causing that. This case is technically solved, but it's one of the most disturbing cases I have ever read about, in more ways than one, so let's talk about it. Elisa Lam was 21 years old when she mysteriously disappeared and died on January 31st, 2013. She was born and raised in Canada and was a student at the University of British Columbia, although she wasn't currently registered when she died. Those who knew her said that she was one of the friendliest people that they had ever known. But what a lot of people didn't know was that Elisa struggled with her mental health. This was kind of like a silent struggle for her up until she was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder and depression, where she was then put on a handful of medications to help treat this. After her diagnosis, she opened up a lot about going through life with mental health issues on a blog/Tumblr page. In one post, she detailed how at the end of 2012, she had what she referred to as a mental health relapse. This made her drop several classes at school. As a way to start the year fresh though, Elisa planned to solo travel across the coast of California, and having never been there before, she was so excited for this trip. She kicked off her trip by going to the San Diego Zoo on January 26th, 2013, and so far everything was going great. But then she checks into the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, and this is where everything starts to go downhill. At the time, the Cecil Hotel had briefly changed its name to the Stay on Main Hotel. I can imagine that this was an attempt to rebrand. The Cecil Hotel had a really bad reputation of being unsafe, and it was a really odd layout as well. Some floors of the hotel were for visitors and tourists like Elisa, and other floors were for short and long-term accommodations for locals. The Cecil Hotel is in the Skid Row area of downtown LA, which, if you know, you know. It's an incredibly dangerous area, and some of the people who hung around that neighborhood would also stay in the Cecil Hotel. The hotel has a long history of suicides and mysterious deaths, and a lot of really high-profile serial killers have also stayed there in the past. At the time of Elisa's death, the hotel manager who was working there had been working there for 10 years, and during that 10-year period, she herself had seen 80 people die at that hotel. So overall, not a great place to stay, so I'm assuming that's why they tried renaming the hotel. If Elisa knew that, I'm not sure if she would have stayed there, but nonetheless, Elisa checked in and she was assigned room 506 up on the hotel's 5th floor. She initially shared the room with a couple of people, but she was moved after just 2 days because she was reportedly acting really strange and scaring the couple. She would leave notes for them that told them to go away or go home, and she would lock the door to the room and not let them in unless they told her the correct password. Right before Elisa disappeared, she also went to a live recording of The Conan Show, and she was kicked out for disruptive behavior. This brings us to January 31st, 2013, the day she went missing. That day started off seemingly normal. The only person who saw Elisa outside of the hotel that day was a local bookstore manager who said Elisa was buying books and gifts for her family. The manager described her as being outgoing, lively, and friendly, and she was wondering if what she was buying was going to be too heavy to travel back home with. At this point, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The last time she was ever seen alive was by the hotel staff. She was wandering around the lobby and at one point yelled, quote, "I'm crazy, but so is LA." End quote. Elisa then went into a restricted part of the hotel where she was asked to leave, and then she made her way towards the hotel's elevators. She then got in and was never seen alive again. What happened after this has never fully been explained. The next day, Elisa was supposed to check out of the hotel, but she never did, and her parents weren't able to get a hold of her anymore, which was really odd because she talked to them daily ever since she left home. A few days of no contact would go by before her parents really began to worry, and so this is when she was reported missing to the police. Her parents then flew out to begin searching right away. When police arrived to the Cecil Hotel, housekeeping had already cleaned Elisa's room and bagged up all of her personal belongings. The housekeeper said that the room was pretty messy, but not in a foul play type of way. There was no sign of forced entry into the room, and although messy, nothing really seemed to ring any alarm. Investigators began searching the hotel, and they even brought in tracking dogs to roam the building, and this also included the hotel's roof. The dogs only picked up on her scent from her room to an area near a window, where the hotel hotel's fire escape was. But other than that, nothing was found, not even up on the roof. Police couldn't legally search every guest room of the hotel unless they had probable cause that a crime was committed, which at this point they didn't suspect. But it was odd that she seemingly vanished into thin air. A couple of weeks would go by before police really upped their search. Part of this investigation was combing through several hours of security footage from the hotel, and soon they were able to spot Elisa's last moments before she disappeared. But it would really only bring more questions than answers. Investigators found security footage of Elisa on January 31st, the last day she was seen alive. It showed her in the hotel's elevator, and it's about 2.5 minutes of really unusual footage. Elisa is shown here moving her body in a really weird way. It looked like she was talking to someone either not there or out of frame, and she's then seen jumping in and out of the elevator. She pushes all of the elevator buttons, but the doors don't close, and she's constantly looking out into the hallway as if someone is following her or something. At one point, she gets out, gets back in, but the doors still won't close, so she gets out once more, walking away, never to be seen alive again. When this footage was released, it caused a media frenzy because of her strange behavior, and theories about what happened started to spread. Some said that it looked like she was running away from someone and trying to get the elevator to close, while others said it looked like something paranormal was going on. Overall, everyone kind of agreed that whatever was happening was very unsettling, and some said that it looked like she was having a psychotic episode. It was at this point that the seriousness of her mental health issues were released by her parents. It came to light just how badly she struggled with her bipolar disorder. Elisa never had any suicidal thoughts or attempts to end her own life, but she was known to randomly stop taking her medication at times, and during those times she would suffer from some pretty bad hallucinations that someone was following her, and she would often hide underneath her bed. At one point in the past, she was even hospitalized for this. So once this came out, the last video footage of her seemed more like she was going through some sort of psychotic episode of some sort, although some people still believe that the footage was somehow tampered with. Fast forward almost 3 weeks later. Around this time, multiple guests of the hotel started complaining about their water being black and having a sour, unusual taste. Some were complaining about low water pressure, so on February 19th, 2013, one of the hotel's maintenance workers made his way up to the roof. On the roof sat 4 1,000-gallon water tanks. They were 4-by-8-foot cylinders propped up on concrete blocks, and they had no fixed access to the top, meaning the only way to get up and check the water at the top was to physically bring a ladder over and climb up. These water tanks provided water to not only the hotel's guest rooms, but also to the kitchen and the hotel's coffee shop. So when the maintenance worker got to the top of the first water tank, he noticed that the hatch was already open, and when he looked inside, he saw Elisa's body. She was nude, laying face up in the water. Her clothes were found sunk to the bottom of the tank, coated in what investigators said looked like sand. Her watch and room key were also in the tank, but the only thing never found was Elisa's phone. Authorities found no evidence of trauma, SA, or suicide, and by the decomposition of her body, it appeared that she'd been in the water tank the entire time that she was missing. The toxicology report found small traces of her prescription medication, along with an allergy medicine and ibuprofen in her system. But what's odd is that the level of her medication that was found in her system is lower than what it should have been. This suggests that Elisa was either undertaking her bipolar medicine or had very recently stopped taking it altogether. Since there was no immediate sign of foul play, for example, no cuts or bruises on her body, authorities said that it would have been impossible for someone to have forced her body into the water tank without injuring her. As a result, Elisa's death was inconclusive, and authorities couldn't determine her manner of death. Ultimately, though, Elisa's death was ruled as an accidental drowning, with her bipolar disorder as a significant factor. We still don't technically know how Elisa got into the water tank that day. Like, nothing can really explain it. The doors and stairs to the hotel's roof are kept locked, and only employees have the keys or passwords to access it. If you tried to force the doors open, an alarm would go off. So this leaves the hotel's fire escape, which is near where her scent trailed off. She could have gone out this window onto the fire escape to bypass all of those security measures. Someone posted a video online showing how easy it would be to get to the roof via the fire escape. And in that video, 2 of the water tank lids were open. So the main question is, was the lid already open to the water tank that fateful day? Like I said, these tanks were massive, and you had to use a ladder to climb up onto them, which a ladder was not there when Elisa was found. The tanks were then protected with heavy lids. Police suspect that Elisa was going through a mental health episode that day and somehow stumbled across the water tanks on the roof. Maybe she thought they were a good place to hide since she was known to do that in the past. Somehow got in, but then couldn't get out of the small hatch. It's suspected she then tried to stay afloat for as long as possible, even taking off her clothes so that they wouldn't weigh her down. But then she just tragically drowned. This still doesn't explain how she got into the water tank in the first place though, or why why none of the tracking dogs or police found Elisa when they searched the roof. A few different pathologists all had mixed opinions about whether or not her death was truly accidental, but that is the official story of what police say happened. I do think that it seems more likely that Elisa was just sadly struggling with her mental health, which ultimately is what led to her tragic death. But I will say that the last footage of her inside that elevator is truly disturbing and sinister, no matter the cause. But it's now been 13 years, and although Elisa's case is technically solved, what she experienced in her final moments remains a mystery.